So there was a woman called Mary who lived in Cahersiveen, and she was a widow woman, but she had 3 children, a daughter and 2 sons, and she was very worried. She not only wanted to rear her children, but she wanted to rear them healthy, but also and happy, but also to give them the best education they could in life. She had a great belief in education, and she really wanted to get the money together so she could educate her children. Now she tried very hard. She had a job, a cleaning job, and she got a second one and even a third one, and she was working every hour that was sent to her. But there was no way that she could still save up enough money to send her 3 children to college. And one evening, she was walking home from one of her jobs. It was late at night, probably heading up towards midnight, when all of a sudden, who appeared in front of her? Only a tall, dark stranger. And he said, "Mary, I hear your thoughts and your dreams and your wishes. I could give you all the money you need to educate your 3 children and educate them really well." Mary said, "My goodness, but what would I have to do in return?" So he said, "In 30 years' time, when the bell strikes 12 at midnight, I'll come and I'll take your soul." And Mary was thinking, will I or won't I? And he said, "This is a once in a lifetime offer. I'll never come again, so you have to make up your mind now." And Mary decided whatever happened to her, at least she would have her children well educated, and they'll be able to have their children well educated, and so she'd save the family and they'd move on from there. So she said, "You have a deal." And she put out her hand and they shook on it. And of course, as time went on, the children, she had grinds, and they were going to the Gaeltacht, and they were going to every kind of a thing they could, and they all went off. And the first child, the girl, she went to Dublin and she became a lawyer. She was the best lawyer in America, as they say, or in Dublin. And she was doing very well for herself. And the second fella, he did very well. He became a priest first, but he also became a professor. And he was so intelligent, he was taken over to the Vatican, and he was right up against the Pope. But the third fella, Jameen, God, she sent him here. She sent him to Tralee, to the IT and the CIT in Cork, and the DIT in Dublin, and the LIT in Limerick. He went to the UL, the UCC, UCD, TID, DIT, TTC, and he went everywhere. And no good, he'd be thrown out of college because he was just that little bit lazy. Now, he wasn't thick, he was clever, but he wouldn't get out of bed in the morning, and if he did, he'd go to the pub quicker than he'd go anywhere else. And of course, no matter where she sent him, he'd be back home, and she tried everything. Eventually, he got a small little job selling insurance, and he did the training course and everything like that. But 'twas a good job, and she was proud of him as well, selling his insurance and dealing with people. And that was okay, and as time went on, the 30 years were nearly up. And a month before the 30 years were up, there was a knock at the door. And it was the devil. And he said, "Now, Mary, I'm giving you a warning. In a month's time, I'll come back. And when the bell strikes 12 at midnight, I'll come and take your soul." And Mary was all right 30 years ago. She said she had nothing to worry about, but now she was worried about her soul being damned for all eternity. But she said, "You know what? I've reared a great daughter, a fine, intelligent daughter. She's the best liar there is in Dublin. Couldn't she come down and she'll sort it all out?" So she rang the daughter and she told her the whole story. And Mary said, "Don't worry, mother, I'll be down." So she came down and she waited. And next thing, about 10 to 12 that night, and the devil arrived in. And he said, "Now, Mary, I hope all your affairs are in order, because when the bell strikes 12 at midnight, I'll take your soul." Well, the girl hopped up and she had every argument going why her mother shouldn't go, and she had a good look at the contract that the mother signed. We forgot that at the start of the story, but she did sign a contract, and she was poring over this, trying to find a loophole some which way or other, and she was poring over it, and she couldn't find anything. And she looked and she argued again with the devil, but he always had another word for her. He always had the last word. And Mary said, "Well, look, Demon," she called him Demon. She said, "Look, Demon, if my affairs are not in order because I was full sure this girl would save me, so could you give me 1 more month? And the devil said, all right, in 4 weeks' time I'll be back here, and when that bell strikes 12 at midnight, I'll come and take your soul. Well, that went on, and the next month she was very worried, and she said, God almighty, that girl was so educated, and she couldn't save me from the devil. But what about the fella from the Vatican? She rang him up, and he came over straight away, and he said, Mom, if they ever knew in the Vatican that I was educated on devil's money, I wouldn't get very far. And then she said, oh, don't worry at all. He said, I didn't tell anybody where I was going or what I was doing. 10 to 12, the devil knocked at the door, and he came in. And he said, now, Mary, when the bell strikes 12 at midnight, I'll have your soul. And with that, your man from the Vatican hopped up, and he said, the power in me will stop you, demon. The power inside me will stop you. The devil said, you don't have much power at all, because you were so guilty about what you were doing, and your mother, you forsaked any power by not telling anybody what you were doing. Oh, God, your man had to sit down. He couldn't do anything. And the mother looked at him. She said, 2 fine stacks now. And she said, look, demon, I'm so sorry. I was full sure the fellow from the Vatican would have my soul sorted. I don't have my affairs in order. Would you please come back in a month's time? And the devil said, rightio, in 4 weeks' time, no matter what happens, when that bell strikes 12 at midnight, I'll be here and I'll take your soul. And off she went. And the girl up in Dublin, she came down for the month because it's the last time she'd ever see her mother. And the fella couldn't go back to the Vatican because that guilt grew up inside him and it was eating him away inside, and he couldn't go back to the Vatican with that kind of guilt in him. And he said he'll stay here as well for the month, and he'll see what he'll do then. And so they were all around the house eating and sleeping and everything, and they were taking all the food from Jimmy, and he said, Mom, what's going on? Why is everybody around the house? And everybody's forlorn. No, she said, Catherine, I might as well tell you how she sold her soul to the devil. She told him everything. She told him about, that's how they got all the great education, was she sold her soul to the devil. And that night, in fact, it was about 10 o'clock, and she said, in 2 hours, the devil is going to come and take my soul. It'll be damned for all eternity, and I'll never see ye again. Give me a chance now, Jameen said. Give me 1 chance. And she said, God help us. Sure, you'll only be around the pub there, and you're trying to sell insurance. You're not doing that good either. And sure, you wasted all your time. You couldn't get every college threw you out. What education have you? And Jameen ran off. And it was getting closer now. He ran off about it was nearly 11:15. And 10 minutes to midnight, the devil came in. And he said, now, Mary, whatever happens, I will have to take your soul tonight. I'm very, I educated your daughter, I educated your son. I tried to educate Jameen, but terms and conditions applied. It was all his fault. There was nothing I can do. He had every chance under the sun. And with that, Jameen came in, and he was breathless. And he said, oh, hello, demon. Oh, Mary said, and now, Jameen, are you going to try and stop the devil taking my soul? And he said, I can't. No, there's no way. You'll just have to go with him, Mother. And Mary said, oh, no, I'm damned for all eternity. And the bell started ringing, and the devil said, now, Mary. And Jameen said, look at your watch. And the devil pulled out his nice pocket watch, and he had a look at it, and Jameen said, it's 5 to 12. The bell is ringing, but it's 5 to 12. There's no way you can take my mother. And the devil tried every argument, and there was no way Jameen would give in. He said, the bell is ringing 12, but it's not midnight. And the devil had to go away. And Mary said, something with all the degrees and the masters and the PhDs, 'tis the insurance fellow will win, because he'll bait everyone, even the devil himself. And from there on in, the bells always rang at 5 to the hour rather than the hour, and that kept Mary's soul safe.